So thanks once again for joining in. And we are all very eager to hear your career journey. Ranga, you have a very fascinating, stint ever since you qualified. And I do not want to preempt and disclose it faster or myself. We want to hear it from you. So the way we do is that we won't or rather I won't introduce you in a formal way as you might have been used to in your earlier appearances. We will know you through this 1 hour talk, right? So Ranga, we want to start with understanding what you do today, and you said you are in your academy. Tell us more about what you do today, and then we will rewind back or do a flashback.
Yeah, so thanks for having me here again. I hope the network stays good throughout the meeting. It should. Let's see. So I presently train civil service aspirants. So this is what I've been doing for the last 5 years, from 2016. Because public service, civil service has been kind of my passion, so to speak. So that is why I joined the civil service. I worked there for a few years, but it was a decision to, it was a personal decision to move out, because at that point of time,
I talk more about it.
I'll definitely talk about it, and how related to the planning, which is what this forum is all about also. I presently train civil service aspirants, right? Because again, it's because I wanted to be associated with civil service in some form. I was working in the IAS for a few years, but now when this opportunity came about, because civil service exam is also about planning in that sense, right? Because it's a very wide spectrum of subjects that you need to study. It's not rocket science. You don't learn E is equal to MC square or anything like that in civil services. It's all about, basic history, geography, economics, polity, which is the Indian constitution and all that. But I think that the key variant between a person who succeeds in the civil service exam and the person who, despite the best of the efforts, does not get through, is, I think, lies in lack of adequate planning and mentoring, right? So people go all over the place, they get stressed out, they read so many things, and then finally they will have it all in their head, but finally what you write in the exam that matters. So I think we do a structured training, coaching of what is important, what is not important, how do you plan your day, how do you plan for the tests regularly, and ensure that, I think, well planned is half done is applicable for every walk of life, and I think it applies equally for the civil service as well. So so that is what I do, and I enjoy quite a bit, because we have produced more than 400 officers in the last 5 years.
Oh wow!
In our academy. And
so, is there any particular subjects that you also teach?
I teach the Indian Constitution. And I also teach anthropology as an optional subject, which is about evolution of man.
So there is no finance as such in the civil service.
No, there is economy related. So it's not finance per se, but economy related. Like what is banking, what is inflation, what does RBI do? What has been the history of planning in India? Which sector,
macroeconomics,
what are the challenges? So it's more about Indian economy per se. And there is a Mr. Israel Javasingh, who's also a ex-IAS officer who runs the academy, who started this academy. He teaches that, and he coaches on that, and I chip in wherever required based on my experience and expertise.
Okay, yes. Excellent. And I think the cracking exams come naturally to you, and I think you are naturally a great planning student. You do have. So the reason I'm mentioning that is we rewind back about 20 years when you qualified as a chartered accountant, right? So take us back there, and then let's start your journey, your first job, and how did you land up in what you're doing today? So take us back to the CA results.
Yeah. So I did my schooling, and after schooling, I did my BCom, and along with my BCom, I did my cost accounting. So I qualified as a cost accountant in '98, and then as a chartered accountant in 2001. So many of the people who are watching this, including you, are chartered accountants. So we all know what it takes to becoming a chartered accountant. Again, I think, I always say this, even for the UPSC aspirants and even for people who come to me for CA advice, right? So I tell them that, you can be unlucky to not clear it in your first attempt, right? But you can never get lucky to clear it in your first attempt. It's not a lottery, right? So you can, everyone prepares in the same way.
Same
There
way.
are people who can be unlucky and who may miss out in the first attempt or the second attempt and may clear it in the third attempt. But there is not a single person who got lucky and cleared it in his first attempt, right? So I think that's a very important. It's not a
That's
lottery.
very well said, and that's the reason there is a very good professional respect
Yes.
amongst
Yeah,
everybody,
because
right?
and each one have their own. So based on, I don't want to explain the nitty-gritties and the details
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that may not be interesting for the group, which is also going to hear this even in a recorded way, but in a thematic sense, right? So I think to plan, to not leave it to chance till the last moment, yeah, is something which I have learned the hard way, which every one of us learns the hard way. It's easier said than done that you plan, you have a plan A, you have a plan B, but we struggle to make even the plan A most of the time, isn't it? Then we'll
Absolutely.
forget about making the plan B. But I think that even during our audit days, our audit manager, I did my articleship with PricewaterhouseCoopers, and so it's a pretty professional setup, and I was exposed to a very professional setup right at my when I started my articleship. In fact, I think the kind of professionalism I saw in PwC, maybe few others will be able to match it. But so the managers used to keep saying, right from which laptop you are using for doing the audit, and if it conks off in the middle of the audit, what is it that you can do to. And we all know, despite all this, there are late nights. The next day is the last day. November 30th was the due date for tax filing. We will plan everything to finish by November 15th, but still November 30th, late in the night, the person will be waiting already in the income tax department, and there'll be phone calls. Has it been signed by the partner? Has it been signed by the partner? So that kind of shows that Murphy's law works most of the time, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So but I think what planning and strategizing helps you is at least to face any issues that may come with equipoise, right? So that you're preparing yourself at least to know that okay, things are expected to not go exactly the way you planned.
Right.
So I think effective planning beats CA exams. Even once you enter the exam hall, there'll be some googlies. You will not know your questions, but you are prepared for it, right? And okay, you would have planned that. Okay, let me write all the questions which I know well first. That is also a small amount of planning, which helps in going to ensure that okay, the
Absolutely.
first 60-70 marks which the examiner corrects, you impress him, so that the last
Yeah.
30-40 marks, even if you have done reasonably well, he may be more lenient towards you. So I think it starts right from there. So I did clear it, and I worked in ICICI Bank, right? And
ICICI was your first job, and
yes,
you
ICICI was.
guys were in retail wholesale banking.
No, no, we were in credit middle office,
Credit
right?
middle
And
office.
in fact, the concept of credit middle office. So treasury requires a middle office even at that time as per RBI guidelines. So there was a middle office. So you have the front office which sells. You have the back office which actually only enters the transaction. So this concept of middle office, which is I think was made compulsory in the West after a lot of scandals and all that. And I think, if I'm not wrong, I don't remember exactly the guidelines, but RBI had made middle office operations compulsory for treasury operations, where you buy and sell bonds, you buy and sell shares, right? Most of us know what treasury operations in a bank is. So middle office was compulsory. So the front office job is only to sell. The back office job is only to enter and document it or pass the accounting entries in your ERP. But the middle office is the one which ensures that okay, whether the guidelines are being followed. And in fact, to the ICICI's credit, I mean, the way things have panned out after 20 years, and even the top echelons of ICICI getting into trouble, right, with the regulators, doesn't speak highly in one sense. But at that time, Mr. Balaji Swaminathan, who was also, who was a partner in KPMG, and he had moved as CFO to ICICI Bank or ICICI Limited that time in 2001. And he said, and it was Nachiket Moore, Dr. Nachiket Moore, right, who was also an RBI board member, and someone whom I respect immensely for his thought process and his thinking. So it was Nachiket Moore, who was heading wholesale banking at that point of time, who said, look, RBI may not have stipulated compulsorily that there should be a middle office for credit operations, but I want to start one, right? Because he felt this is something which will prepare you. You are the as a board member. I do not know. I have laid down a policy. The policy is well planned. It is debated in detail in the board, and then the policy is laid down that these are the things that must be followed before you lend money, before you actually disburse money to a client. The sanction order comes to me, in the sense I at the senior level only sanction whether I can give 50 crores to someone or 100. I am not too sure whether the policies that I have laid down as to what is the documentation that needs to be done, what are the steps that need to be followed, whether they are followed or not. And suddenly tomorrow, if the borrower defaults, because the back office is only going to make entries, and if tomorrow that borrower defaults, then I'll make a fool of myself going to the court. So he brought in this middle office to ensure that what is planned to be done is actually executed properly or not.
Interesting.
And
I didn't know that ICICI was the first to start this.
yes, ICICI was the first to start a proper middle office, right? So we were cribbing in the sense that because we are chartered accountants, and after you finish your CA, you feel you're on top of the world, right? So you feel that you've arrived, you've achieved. Then as your hair grays, you realize that it's the small thing which hundreds have done before and hundreds will do after as well. But at that point of time, we used to feel bad that we thought we know loan document banking better, we know loans, we know financial management, we should be selling loans. But I think conceptually that is something which I took away from that job. That yes,
Interesting.
it's easy to as important as planning and preparing a policy for a corporate is some kind of oversight to ensure that it is properly implemented.
Okay.
And then I moved to the IAS.
No. We want to know more details. So, how long did you work in ICICI?
I worked in the first stint for 4 years. Yeah.
In first stint, I'm missing some information there. Okay, so and then you moved to IAS from ICICI.
Yeah. So as I told you,
what was the thought process there? That doesn't sound very natural, right? After especially having done such a tough exam of CA, and and being in one of the best banks in the country, what was the thought process that led you to IAS?
No, so as I told you, I mean, some form of association in public life and social life, or something which I've always had as a thought process, right? And the end is that, and there are various means to achieve that. And at that point of time, I probably thought that this is the best means, right? So because it's part of permanent executive. As IAS officers, you try and frame policies, you try and implement them. So I have had this kind of, I would say, a great ambition, not a burning ambition, so to speak, right from childhood. But even after I finished CA and I started working in the corporate world, I thought, okay, I need to try out something there, where my heart lies. And so I mean, I was the only earning member of the family at that point of time also, so I couldn't have taken the chance of quitting my job and preparing for the exam.
So while working in ICICI, you prepared without taking a break, without taking a sabbatical for something like an IAS. Wow. And you cleared in first attempt, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
That's not surprising.
So I did not. I took only my exam days off for the civil service exam before the preliminary examination, and I took 20 days off for my mains examination. So that's how I did it. So Rishi, I am not able to, your thing is frozen. So is it a problem from my side?
Okay.
We can see well, Rishi.
Yeah, I think Ranga is facing a bit of a. You're back, Ranga.
I'm back, no?
Yeah.
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 So yeah, I took 15 days off for my preliminary examination and the exam days off for my mains. Yeah, but again, I knew that it is a tough exam. There's no doubt, and I did not go for any coaching or anything. I was in Chennai preparing for it. But 2004 May was my prelims examination, but I started preparing from 2003 March. Right. So I used to ensure that every weekend I don't do anything else. I only prepare. I come back home at around, let's say, 8 o'clock. I prepare. I get up early in the morning and I prepare. And there are videos I've made, which is available in our academy website and all, academy YouTube channel and all. I used to travel 1.5 hours one side to reach office. So that was 3 hours every day. And I think, be it for my CA, be it for my ICAA, be it for my IAS exam, the best or the most effective I have prepared is when I used to travel. When I used to travel in local trains in Chennai, right, or in buses, because just ignore everything else and open the book and sit and prepare. So again,
I think the what helped that you didn't have a smartphone then.
Yeah, exactly. So there was no need to keep checking your WhatsApp or your Twitter account.
There's no
every 5
distraction.
seconds. Yeah, in
Right.
fact, that is what I tell the people whom I train now. That the beauty of the present day world is that you can be busy for 16 hours a day, absolutely doing nothing. Right? You check WhatsApp for 1 hour, then Facebook for 1 hour, Twitter for 1 hour, Instagram for 1 hour, and then you come back to WhatsApp, you will have enough content to keep you occupied for 1 more hour, right? So you can be completely busy for 16 hours doing nothing. Yeah. So that's right. So and that is how I wrote the exam and I cleared it.
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. That's not easy by any means, Ranga. So great to know. And then you qualified as a IAS, and which cadre were you? Which state? I think somewhere in Northeast, if I remember.
Yes.
Assam or something.
Assam.
Okay.
Meghalaya. So it happens now. There are zonal preferences which you can give, but during our times, it is a lottery. It's like an alphabetical order.
Oh, is it?
So,
Okay.
depending on the rank, Andhra, Assam, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, whatever rank you get, you'll be allotted according to the alphabetical order of the states, unless you get an insider quota, which is very difficult, right? So I wouldn't want to get into those details because that may be absolutely confusing.
That may not
confusing for a group of people who have.
But we are keen to know what did you start and what was your profile as an IAS officer? What were you doing?
So you get trained in Mussoorie, Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration for about a year. Then you get trained in a district for 1 more year. And then you're allotted a state. I mean, you're allotted a state at the beginning itself. The district training also happens in the state to which you're allotted. Then you go and work there for 1 year in the district training, come back for a refresher course in the academy for 2 months, and then you get posted. So this training, right, again, is something which is very well planned by the government of India, right? So it's mainly aimed at preparing an officer for about 10 to 12 years, because after 10 to 12 years they come back for their refresher training, which is called phase 3. So the idea is that you train them for 2 years so that they are able to face, see, of course, in the murky world of politics, whether all those training is put to use, whether everyone does everything appropriately, correctly as per the law book, that's a different debate altogether. But the idea behind the training, which is instituted by the government, is that you train them for 2 years so that they are prepared for the 10 years following that, till they come back for the next level of training. Because the first 10 years, typically an IAS officer spends on the field. When you say field, in government IAS, there are 2 types of posting. One is the field, where you're a district collector, you're a corporation commissioner, you're a sub-collector, you're a divisional commissioner. So these are field postings. And then you have secretariat postings. So secretariat postings is where you're a health secretary, education secretary, a finance secretary, or various departments you work as joint secretary, additional secretary. So that's more about the secretarial job of planning and preparing policies. the field officers are the one who are implementing it on the ground. So the first 10 years of an IAS officer is typically in the field. And so this training in academy, the Masuri Academy, there's a lot of fun, there's a lot of networking that goes into it. It's one of the best times I've ever had in my life, right? In 40 years of me living, that 9 months is something which I cherish, right? Because it's virtually like a paid holiday from the government of India, right? But still, you learn, you get to know so many of your batchmates, and that networking helps till date, right? I want something even done in the US. All I need to do is call up my batchmate who's posted in Washington Embassy, and she will do it for me. Singapore, Malaysia. I want something in Bihar. All I need to do is call up my batchmate, right? And I don't ask
Absolutely.
for extraneous favors. So it easily gets done by them as well, right? So straightforward favors, but still that networking is something which you develop over there. And I mean, because I don't want, I mean, it's not some discussion on my life history, right? I want to also chip in with my thought process on how all these, in hindsight, when I look at it, when you say planning as a topic and you want to link it, right? So I think a very important part of planning and being prepared for a plan A, plan B, and for meeting any exigencies, I think, is to keep your networks active always, right? Especially in a corporate kind of setup. You suddenly call up someone when something goes wrong after 3 years. He's not going to give you the same kind of response if you're regularly in touch with someone. Just a courtesy, or if they ask you for something, not ignore it, right? So I have seen a lot of people who will only ask favors, never do favors in return, right? That's not going to help. So small things which you can help do, and keeping your network in your corporate related to whatever you do, right? If it is banking, the banking circle. If it is
That's a professional network.
whatever is the professional network that you need to keep active for your work, that is something I think which you should always keep warm. It's easier said than done again, but at least, it's easy, but to some extent it's easier today, and there the smartphone comes in handy, right? Because earlier, if you have to contact someone, you will have to necessarily make a call to that person and speak to them or go and meet them. But today, invariably, you have WhatsApp group for various things, right?
Right,
So
absolutely.
so it's easier to connect with people regularly, so that just sounding them off of something important, they will feel gratified that someone is consulting us, and that is going to come in handy when something goes wrong, or you're in an emergency or a crisis situation where you want to get that inputs. So I think that the training definitely helps. It prepares you for the field postings that you do, right? And after the
But what
training,
was, I want to move to your posting at such
yeah.
after this, and I'm very keen to know what was some of your initial feelings coming from the background in ICICI and PwC kind of a workplace. Now you are in a typical government and
Exactly.
in the ground. What
In
was your
fact,
first reaction, and how did you? What was the big changes that you saw?
yeah.
Versus
So in
what?
fact, in hindsight, see, I don't regret having quit the IAS and doing what I'm doing now. But in hindsight, if I have to pinpoint a reason for having quit the IAS, that is probably because of my unpreparedness for the cultural change that I was entering. Right. So I was not, while I planned and cleared the exam properly, I was not mentally prepared for what I was getting into. Right. Because here you are at 20 years of age in PwC. They say in the next 10 days the flash report has to go to the Thomson headquarters in France, and so you're working day in and day out and sending audit schedules. You go to ICICI Bank, you are told that in the next 3 days this loan has to be sanctioned and this loan has to be disbursed, and you work towards it. And suddenly you go to a place where a file will take 8 days to move from one table to another, right? So that mental, I think preparation planning is not just about the actual operational planning, so to speak. I think
But
it
the
has got a
mental.
lot to do with the mental planning of what you are going to encounter, right?
Mm.
So because that again prepares you. I think planning, as I said, ultimately, proof of the pudding is in its eating, right? So ultimately it's only actions that matter. It's only results or actions. I mean, even results is fine, it's a consequence, but you cannot keep planning all your life, right? So planning is only to prepare you. So I think that mental planning as an executive, as a head, or as a planner, I think while you prepare the blueprint for the plan that needs to be executed on the ground, I think it's important that you yourself as a leader, and as if you have a team who are part of the planning and the execution process, to mentally plan, to for them to plan mentally as well, as to what is it that I'm going to do. I mean, what I'm going to actually get is could be quite different from what I had planned. So I think that kind of also uh, helps in effective execution, and also prepares you for the unexpected. So the government is typically, like, for example, the first day I joined, right, I still remember it was on my birthday on August 24th in 2007. And the first day I took office, there was floods in my subdivision. And in Assam's floods can be pretty dangerous, right? So, in fact, two of the people lost their lives that same night, being washed away by floods. And as a young officer, you feel that you are responsible for it, whereas you're not, right? So,
And
but
you were what post then? What were
it's a
you?
sub collector. The starting,
Sub-collector. Okay.
it's called sub collector in some states. It's called SDM, right, in northern part of India, subdivisional magistrate. Yeah. Uh, in Assam, it used to be called as SDO, subdivisional officer. But it's basically the entire country is divided into 600 odd districts, and each district is divided into subdivisions, right? So, on the
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
starting role of an IAS officer in any state is typically to start as a subdivisional officer of a subdivision, right? And you report it to the collector, and you are in charge for law and order. You are in charge for relief work, you're in charge for conducting elections. And though I had a very small stint of just about 1 year before I decided to come to the secretariat and then move out of the IAS, but in that 1 year, I have conducted elections. I have handled the law and order issues, even with with the terrorist outfits like Alpha. I have handled floods over there. So and I think, but planning in the government is slightly different. Just if I have to give a background to it and briefly link it to what is planning. So government is a very, very reactive machinery, right? So there is not much of planning that goes into government. Even today there are a lot of schemes that are announced by various governments, but it is more to, I mean, I'm not saying that no work gets done, right? So I do feel that government has a very important role to play anywhere in the world, and especially in the Indian context, the government machinery is very important, because we have a significant proportion of the population which is dependent on government for their day-to-day living, right? At least we are dependent on the government only for some few services. We take care of our lives ourselves through the private sector otherwise, right? We go to a private hospital for delivery, we go to a private school for our schooling, we go to a private college for our education, we work in a private sector bank, we keep our money also in private sector banks. So the government interface is very limited for us, but significant portion of the population
Depends heavily.
depends heavily on the government. But government mostly is reactionary work. But when it comes to elections and relief, the election machinery in our country is something which, even the best of the McKinseys and the BCGs, planners of the world, if they try and come and plan an Indian election and conduct it smoothly as the people do it, I will doubt it, right? So, in fact, I used to tell when I used to work in the government, especially when the elections happened and after the elections there was some other work which was pending. I used to tell them, look, you same set of guys could pull out an election in 20 days without even one mistake, right? That's because they are trained into it, they are tuned into it. It's clearly laid out. There is enough adequate training that goes for conducting of elections. For relief, there is, if it's a crisis, they all put their heads and hands together to help out each other. But when it comes to normal times, it's just lack critical and
So the
very
preparedness is.
lethargic approach that is there. So I think that probably also kind of I was feeling repulsive, maybe,
But
and that's what.
did anything of your corporate career also help you execute of your job as an IAS? Like, could you apply any learning, or was it very difficult in the government in terms of
No,
work?
see, I think the basic principles of planning and execution is the same everywhere, right? It's the environment and the variables may be different, But you need to have a goal in mind, right? Whatever is the goal, you need to ensure that what are the resources that are available for you to reach that goal, and whether you are being realistic in planning towards reaching that goal, right? So I think it's the
The
same even in the
culture
government.
same, it's just the
Yeah,
way of execution is
yeah,
different.
it's just a way of execution. That's
So
it.
Ranga, how long were you with IAS service?
Yeah, I was there for about 3.5 years.
Okay, and then did you?
I came back to ICICI Bank. So
And
that's
the
why I
reason
said,
you thought you were misfit in that whole world, or
you
was
can say
corporate
that.
calling back?
You can say that. So it was not that I wanted to desperately come back to ICICI Bank that I quit the IAS. I quit the IAS and I came back. In fact, I came back without a job.
Okay,
And
so you were that sure that that's not the place you want to be.
yeah, yes, I came back without a job. And that's when
And
Lim,
do they
that's
try
when
to retain you like
yeah,
they
yeah,
do?
definitely, definitely.
They do.
So
Okay.
yeah, so there was also the chief minister's office which called and said that why do you want to quit? Is there anything that we can do? But that was too early for deputation. But our seniors said that just hold on for 2-3 more years. You can go on deputation to Tamil Nadu. There were people from Delhi, the Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy director under whom
Hmm.
we trained. He called up and said, so I told them that, sir, I have nothing against the civil service, right? And I'm not. I'm not, such a megalomaniac to think that this is not worth me, because there are bigger people who have done greater things in that.
Hmm.
So it's not that that this is not worth me. I am made for larger things in life or anything like that, right? So
But then you didn't have a plan either, right? What would you do after this? You just quit and
yeah, yes, yeah. That is probably a time when I did not plan. Okay, I had a broad plan that I should get back to work, but
of course, yeah.
I did not. I thought because the relieving process itself took 8 months, right?
Oh, is it okay?
Yeah. It's a long drawn process in the government. There were a lot of complications in the process, and because of that, it took 8 months. So I did not. I was not too sure that when I was going to get relieved, and there's no point in trying to
Initiate a new thing,
approach someone and get a
right?
job. But after I came back, and this was in May 2008, and I thought I'll just relax for 1 month and then start looking out for an opportunity. And that's when the global meltdown. In fact, Lehman had not fallen by then, right? Lehman fell in September 2008. But because there were signs of the subprime crisis starting off, and all the banks getting into trouble starting from March, April of 2008, it was a virtual freeze in hiring
Hmm.
in all corporates, all banks, everything. And that's when, okay, ICICI Bank, having worked there earlier through my contacts, I could join back ICICI Bank.
And how long was the second stint?
My second stint was as a relationship manager and then as a senior relationship manager for about 5.5 years.
Okay. And now we're talking about early 2010s.
Yeah.
So, and I'm very keen to get to this point. And then you took a plunge into politics a few years back,
Yes.
right? How
Yes.
did that happen then?
No, so exactly. So I was in banking for about 5.5 years, but then after banking, I tried my hand with my friend in CA practice for about 1.5
Okay,
years.
yeah, you did that as well.
Yeah. But not traditional tax and audit practice. It was more,
Okay.
he was doing some kind of compliance audits for corporates.
Okay.
And I worked with him for about 1 year, right, doing some stock audits and other stuff. But I realized that that was definitely not my cup of tea, and that's when this opportunity to be into training, into coaching of civil service aspirants came about,
So
and
you
that I've been
started
doing.
coaching then. Okay.
Yeah, and I've been doing that for the last 5 years, starting from 2016. But that's when, as I told you, uh, uh, public service or something related to government service is the end. So IAS was a means. Coaching and trying to create civil servants is a means. But as Aristotle says, political action is the one of the highest forms of human action, because even if you stay away from politics, politics doesn't stay away from a human being, right?
Right.
So we are
But just tell us, how did it get sparked? How did it get started? And why that particular party? And I don't want to
yeah,
disclose. I would let you do it. Yeah.
yeah. So basically, as I told you, politics determines a lot of things in our country, right? Everywhere in the world, and especially in our country, because we are a democracy. I mean, how much ever a lot of imperfections in our democracy, no doubt, but still, we are a vibrant democracy. And so, when this opportunity came about, right, and Sri Kamal Hassan, who all of us know as a great actor, but he was someone who, even through his movies, was was trying to give social messages, right? Trying to create a kind of environment, which stands by the ideals which our country stands for, right? Social justice, secularism, so on and so forth. He made movies like Hey Ram, he made movies in Tamil, a lot of movies which had a lot of social message. So I've always been a fan of his acting, but it was not because I was a fan of his acting that I went and joined his party. But he wanted to bring an alternative, and as an alternate politics, so to speak, where you bring more integrity, more honesty to public life. And that is when I thought that, okay, when he launched the party in 2018, and when I went and met him, and I said that, sir, I would want to be associated. Right.
You yourself went up to him and
Yes,
volunteered to join. Okay.
yeah. I mean, through a common friend, I got to know him, and he invited me, and I went and met him, and he was happy to have me, right? And been in his important think tank team as well. So that's how, and there are a lot of things that we have done as a party, right? It may not be significant changes, because in politics, significant changes can be brought only by a party, by a government in power, right?
Mm.
But opposition gives pressure
Absolutely.
to the
Absolutely.
government to do things which otherwise they may leave out, right? So grassroots democracy, there is something called as Gram Sabhas, right? And it happens throughout the country. So we have the parliament, which is at the central level, we have the state legislature and the state government, which is at the state level, and the local level is the municipalities and the panchayats for the urban areas and the rural areas respectively. So the Gram Sabhas, as per the law, are required to happen once every quarter. And it is the only place where we have participatory democracy in our country, because the rest is all representative democracy. You go and just vote for your MLA or MP, and whether you like him or not, once he gets elected, it's only after 5 years you can change them, right? Of course, you have civil society, pressure groups, codes to try and see whether things go right or wrong. But how many of us do it, and how many of us have the time or energy to do it? But Gram Sabha is one where every quarter people have to come together and they decide, they plan for themselves what they want in their village, right? If this is the money that is coming in, I want a well, I want this road to be cleared, I want this community hall to be plastered because it is leaking, whatever it is. So it's a classical example of a participatory democracy, right? Which is what Gandhiji wanted for the entire country. And it's also a very, and states like Kerala, states like Karnataka to some extent, states like even West Bengal to some extent, right? And we don't even have to go to West Bengal and other places, but Kerala, and to some extent even Gujarat, the urban bodies at least. But Kerala is a classic example of wonderful district level planning, Zilla, as they say, Zilla Parishad. Their Zilla Parishads are so powerful. They are given financial development and they plan so well, right? And that is the reason why Kerala may not be, in terms of economic development, the #1 state in the country, but in terms of all social indicators, because economic development itself is an oxymoron, so to speak. It's economic growth and human development, right? So
Kerala definitely ranks very high in the socio-economic indicators.
So it's better than Western European countries in terms of its IMR, in terms of its MMR, in terms of its Human Development Index, right? In terms of its hunger index. It's fascinating, and that is because of effective planning. And that is again a lesson from a planning perspective, that the plans should be as much as possible bottom up. Yeah. Well, of course, see, the people at the bottom, if you ask them to plan and you leave it to them, there are two challenges. One is they will not know the whole picture. And secondly, it is human nature to to be lethargic and try and
fizzle it out. Yeah,
absolve of any responsibility, right? So they will say, sir, this cannot be planned, this cannot be done, right? So one of the important qualities of a leader, of a planner, is to ensure that you set your target and you plan and you achieve it, right? But having said that, if the planning, that is one of the reason why the planning commission, while it did a good job to some extent, why did the planning commission not succeed? Why in USSR, while there was countrywide planning, which is more a communist socialist kind of thinking, but it has not resulted in either growth or development for the people, right? And that is the reason why the planning commission has been wound down. I mean, Niti Aayog is old wine in new bottle. That's a different matter. But I'm saying it's again a lesson that we have learned from our own country's working, that planning from the top without engaging the bottom is a plan which is bound to fail. Yeah. So
and that's a good point, I think, which is very relevant for the corporates as well, for all of us. That connect is very, very important.
Yeah, exactly. So so this Gram Sabha, I mean, the reason why he drifted to this is because those Gram Sabha meetings never used to happen in a proper manner in Tamil Nadu. But I, based on my experience and my knowledge as to how it happens in Kerala and all, advised our President Kamal Hassan to run a campaign for that. And in the last 2.5 years, that activity has picked up in the state of Tamil Nadu, right? There are a few other things which we have put pressure on the government to implement, to streamline. So, it gives you some satisfaction, but yes, ultimately.
So is there a bit of shock again here, like you had in your stint with the government as an IAS?
No, I think.
Or this time you are much more.
Yeah. So my hair is grayed,
Okay.
So definitely the
expectations are now.
Expectations are reasonable, right? So so even in corporate they say no, that promise less, perform more. Yeah, I mean that doesn't work in today's world, unfortunately.
Especially not in politics. It's other. With one question, what is the common linkage and any in your long career you've done 4 or 5 different, absolutely different things that people have separate careers in, right? Either it's corporate or it's in practice or IAS or politics. You have almost done everything. What's been your common learning across, because it's something that none of us have been able to see in closer detail, right? So many different things. What's been your observation about people and way of working?
Yeah.
Is there a common thread amongst all these?
Yeah. So I think there are a few common learnings and few common observations as well. So few common observations is that by and large, in any setup, majority of the people are well-meaning and good people, right? But it is unfortunately the people who wield power have vested interest. I think in any
that's
setup,
true across the
across politics, corporate, and in fact, I sometimes wonder whether it is the cause, which is the cause and which is the effect. Is it because they have got into power that they have become like that, or is it only because they are like that they have got to positions of power? So it's difficult to tough one as to which is the cause and which is the effect, but that is something. So for people in the middle management, for people, the positive thing about mankind per se is something which we should keep reminding ourselves. It's very difficult to speak truth to power in whichever setup you are in. People generally don't do it these days. You look at the way the media houses are run. Their job is to speak truth to power, truth to power, but they don't do it, right? Anyone for that matter, even in the corporate world. So I think that is a value that people should imbibe. Good planning definitely prepares you. As I told you, it's not that well planned is half done. Not because it goes exactly as per the plan. It's because you are prepared for, mentally as well as in the execution phase for taking care of the problems or the changes that may come along the way. So, well planned is half done. That is how I look at it. That, it's not that you have a blueprint and once you plan, it's half done means 50% it will actually happen exactly like that, and the balance 50% also you will complete. It doesn't work like that. I think
absolutely. In fact, I want to steal another question because you said that. Is there something that we in corporate can learn from the, say, administration or the way politics work? I know you mentioned something about running the election that they do really, really well. Something probably BCGs and McKinsey's of the world won't be able to do. But is there anything else that comes to your mind, especially from the government working and in the politics that can be
no,
learned by the
I
corporates?
think so though it is reactionary, as I told you, and may not be always well planned, but I think the biggest learning that you get from looking at politicians, looking at bureaucrats, looking at government officers is that to maintain balance, see, the government, especially in a country like India, every day is you will get at least 10 to 15 unexpected news, right from the sub collector who suddenly in the morning you wake up and you have a plan, you have a meeting for doing something for implementing a government project and all that, and you go to the office, there'll be 10 people gathering your office saying that, sir, there is a law and order problem in that circle, people are beating each other up, go and do something, right? You go to the office thinking that, okay, I'll do this, there'll be a flood, people will be calling up and saying, sir, there is a flood, do something. The elephant would have walked into, would have breached the corridor and would have come and trampled upon the farm. So I
And
think
these are real life and death issues.
yeah,
And we in
yeah,
corporate get very ruffled with an email that comes from it.
exactly. I mean,
That's a good
imagine.
point.
So I may have difference of opinion with the government of the day, or those are political issues. But look at it. I mean, the central government, the prime minister, the home minister. Let's say they have joined for a cabinet meeting to discuss about some health insurance policy, and you get a call saying that 40 people have been killed in a terrorist attack, right? So I think uncertainty is thy name, right? In government, it's purely uncertainty every day at all levels, and the uncertainty becomes bigger once people move up the chain. The uncertainty
Right.
for the prime minister is a terrorist attack, or some flood or earthquake or some big accident which has killed thousands of people. The uncertainty
Right.
for a chief minister is in a state. The uncertainty for the prime minister is in the entire country. The uncertainty for the district collector is in his entire district. But they somehow, I mean, of course, yes, beyond a point, they get so thick-skinned that, they are more into media management and, ensuring that it doesn't affect their job, so to speak. But there are genuinely good people who take it in their chin and go about in a very in a very dedicated manner of approaching it. So I think
So probably over a period of time, they start expecting it becomes a daily affair,
yeah,
and then you
but
kind of get tuned to it.
you still don't know what for example, this corona. I mean, who would have planned for it? But quickly, the government machinery. I think the government hospitals have given the best care across the country, especially in states like Tamil Nadu and all. And the credit goes mainly to the doctors for the way they have handled it. So I think that is one lesson which from the government. That uncertainty is part of life, right? Fooled by randomness. There's a famous book which all planners would have, people into planning would have definitely read, that you think that you're doing everything as a plan, but you're always fooled by randomness, right? But
Absolutely.
at least you're prepared for it, and the way you handle it, and
Yes.
the ABC, that for what you get stressed out, as you said, one mail shouldn't stress you out, a 10-minute delayed meeting should not stress you out. but something really going wrong should need not stress you out, but should caution you and do. So I think that is something which definitely.
I also see a commonality in what you're saying from what General Menon, when I spoke to him, said about how Army deals with uncertainty, because it's just that you can't plan for everything, but you can prepare for the scenarios that in which you'll be operating at that point in time. So I see, and I think that is a great thing to learn from the government machineries.
Yes.
I think, like you said, they probably face the uncertainty at much larger and real one, right? Facing life and death situations.
Exactly.
So that's a great learning. Thanks, Ranga. Thanks a lot. I would really want to give some space to the listeners here. I know Ranjit has, Ranjit, you have a really big question. Ranjit messaged me. So what I'll do is, Ranjit, I'll let you ask. Ranjit is also from Chennai, a good friend of mine as well,
Okay.
Ranga, and he is a chartered accountant, currently a CFO. So Ranjit, go ahead and ask your questions to Rangarajan directly. That would make it easier.
Yeah, sure. It has been great conversation, and happy to hear both of you sharing your views. And Mr. Ranga, it is a pleasure to hear you speak, and also see you dabbling into so many different aspects, which, as Rishi already said, that somebody would spend one lifetime doing it, and you already done it, and you are still not even halfway through about, right? So so very encouraging. But that is the biggest point that I have, sir, is I'm sure over the last few years, some of your weaknesses you would have won over, and you would have made it as a new strength of yours, because you have done so many things. Politics is not easy. I'm sure it's a dreadful thing, even to think about, but you would have definitely overcome some of your weaknesses or dark feelings, to actually even try to do that. Similarly, some of your strengths, would have turned into your weaknesses, getting into IAS or getting into politics. So from those qualities, how have you been able to move your weaknesses to strength and strength to weaknesses? Because I believe that is a significantly important aspect of professional development, because you start relying too much on your strengths, and you don't even realize when it has become weakness, and you just lose your career or even your life in doing one thing. That's my first question. The second question has been because you have done so many things, at some point in time you would have felt am I in the right space, am I doing everything right? That same question, because you always feel self-doubted, or you always feel insecure about your own choices. What do you tell yourself for your choices? How do you overcome your insecurities? Those are my questions.
Yeah. So strength turning into weakness, nobody would want to do that, and I don't think you just keep working on your strength. But weaknesses, yes, I have identified, and it's still, I don't think I would have I have still gotten over them. I know two of my biggest weaknesses. One is to be impulsive, right? So I tend to be very impulsive in deciding. Of course, not big decisions, but day to day. See, because 80% of your life goes in making only small decisions, even for the biggest corporate leader, right? So it's only 20% of the time that they think about many important global decisions for the company also, right? But I think that impulsiveness is something which it helps at some places, but it can be a problem, and that is something which I continue to work on, and a kind of repetitive thinking, right? And I tell this even to the candidates whom I train here for the civil service, that don't have this repetitive thinking of oh, this could have gone this way, what if it had happened like this could have been better, right? So I think what if scenarios, playing it in your mind too many times about what has already happened, is something which you should tend to avoid, and try and move forward. So I think that I hope answers your first question. And sorry, I missed your second question.
Second question is basically, how do you manage your insecurities and the choices that we make?
No, I understand. So again, so that's to some extent linked to the first question as well. So because see, you keep having self doubts, right? And I think there is some saying, if you're not too sure what to do in your life, don't worry, 99% don't, right? Because I think there are very few rare people, like let's say a Maradona, who wanted to be only a footballer and went on to become a footballer, or a Tendulkar who wanted to be a cricketer and went on to become a cricketer, or scientist, right? So it's invariably sports people and scientists uh, who actually, probably to some extent, right, or creative people, right, who are into films or acting right from their childhood. Like for example, the party where I am, Dr. Kamal Hassan, he always wanted to be an actor right from his age of 5, and he went on to become a great actor. So that's a big difference. But majority of us belong to this, belong to this mean in the bell curve, right? We are not in one extreme. We are neither in the poor extreme. We are in the average, right? And I mean, I don't think Zuckerberg would have thought that when he was a 10-year-old kid, okay, I'm going to create a social platform in the world, and that is going to be the biggest hit in the entire world. I mean, you would have tried this hand in different things. This clicked. There are so many businessmen, so many leaders, politicians. Yes, to some extent, they politicians to some extent are career politicians. I mean, that's also probably because of their birth in Indian context, Indian scenario. But otherwise, I think no. I think I'm giving a too long-winding answer for your straightforward question. I think insecurities are there. Insecurities will continue to be there. I think the key is to see whether you are broadly enjoying what you're doing. And if you're not enjoying what you're doing broadly, if every day you are feeling uncomfortable doing what you're doing, then maybe you'll have to look for another avenue, right? And that is what I have always done in my life. So now I'm enjoying what I'm doing. So I'll continue to do it till I feel that I should do something else.
Thank you. I'll love to follow you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Dhaval, Parishek, Sanjay, Sheetal, Rajesh. Yeah, Rajesh, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. I am Rajesh from Sanofi. So I have a question here for administrators and politicians. Who is their end customer? It is their own self or the public in general?
No, so it's a very straightforward answer. The end customer is definitely the public in general, right? And
does it end up like that?
No, it doesn't end up like that. Not always. I mean, I will give, but see, at the end of the day, it's unfortunate that it's steeped in corruption, the politics in our country. But if at all, if there is one set of people, even if it is for their personal gain of winning the next election, if there is one set of people who constantly are in interaction with the grassroots people and trying to see what needs to be done, of course, see, we all pay our taxes, and that's a great contribution to the country. I'm not saying that only people who are in politics and who go and do social service are people who are contributing to the country. Definitely not. But I think there are good politicians, and anyway, even not so good politicians will try and do something for the people because they have to go and face them for the votes, right? And administrators, bureaucrats, yeah, vast majority of them do keep public service and the public in mind while doing their work more than their self-interest. A significant portion of them, a significant portion of administrators, and a decent portion of politicians as well. But yeah, there is always scope for improvement. There's no doubt for that.
Okay, thank you. Acha, one more question. I have now been getting a lot of this application alerts from the government. Mostly it will be from the central government as to requiring the general public to give their inputs on various schemes and various programs that they would like to launch.
Right.
How good is it? How good is it in being implemented? Are these points taken by them, or?
Yeah, they will definitely be. So
okay.
The government machinery, and it's not just the current Prime Minister's office. Every time the Prime Minister's office and the central government is definitely more professional in the way it is run. Yeah, I mean, there are systems in place that, and especially if they are seeking public opinion, it'll at least be looked into. Whether it is actually taken into account and implemented is a different matter, but it will definitely be looked into. So, feel free to give your suggestions if you have any on any such platforms.
Okay. Thank you.
We're using you as an insider who can tell us, clear our perception maybe, and then that's a good. What is the possibility of the next profession we might see you in?
No.
So, I mean, you're like when you said,
your guess is as good as mine. So
that keeps things exciting.
Yeah.
Keeps things exciting. So, by the way, he has fought an election as well last year, right?
Yeah,
it was last year, right? In 2019.
Yeah, last year. Yeah.
Okay. It's amazing. Anybody else? Any questions? Sheetal, do you have a question?
Not at the moment. I'm still in awe of the information that I've received.
No, nothing.
Okay. So, any career advice to people who are, there is a risk of, listening to you, and people might feel, I was waiting. I wanted to hear somebody like this who jumps, does whatever he feels like, and let me quit my job and jump into something. Any advice for any such thoughts? Is it good to go and try out things that you are?
No, I think
in a YOLO principle, or you would advise think through.
Yes. Thinking through something, and I think see, if you're a very, very big risk taker by nature, so that's what. So
are you?
No, I'm not. But when I look back at what I've done in the last 20 years, it sounds like that. But I don't think I'm that.
You're a good planner, definitely.
So I think suggestions more than because I think each one, especially in the present day world, I think what I shared is something, and everyone is going to process it themselves and try and mull over it and decide. But I think yes, I mean it's you can decide if you're doing something. I mean, as long as you're satisfied in what you're doing, you will continue to do it. If you're unsatisfied, try and do something different. Of course, you need to take care of your family. There is a financial angle to it. But I always say this, that, if I am going to get into, I mean, and again, it doesn't happen like that. But I'm only saying, if you are earning, let's say, 2 lakhs per month or 3 lakhs per month now, and you will be better off in terms of what you do by earning, let's say, 25% less, but you will be happy doing it. I think those are the kind of calls that you can take, isn't it? See, because if the delta is not so much, if instead of 10 lakhs, if you're earning only 1 lakh, there's no point in leaving a 10 lakh job and doing 1 lakh, because then this may not be satisfying after a point of time. But small things, if you can.
That's a good point, Ranga. I think the financials do play a big role, especially as you grow little, middle management and above, because the delta possibly looks much larger, especially coming from the corporate, and especially somebody like you going into the government or going on your own, either as a practice or anything, jumping out, would have a huge delta. So is it that the passion that overrides that delta, or there is more calculation to it that you probably make up in some other ways?
For an average person, it is based on calculation, isn't it? So, see, because I mean, as I told you, if your passion is to be a movie maker and you feel that, I want to make movies in any case, I'll go and join as a, that's a different matter. But, if your passion is to do something on your own, or try out something on your own, or try and shift to some other stream, then I think it's a bit of passion, a bit of calculation. I think it for
so as they say, it's a calculated risk.
Yeah, it's a calculated risk. Yeah.
All right. Great talking to you, Ranga. I think we need to make more use of you on the Gap platforms. I'll definitely would like to have you on board on the
Sure.
the platform, and we'll probably come back and make use of you in terms of your general knowledge. I know you do a lot of interesting videos on explaining concepts, possibly for your students. But I think all of us can benefit that. I saw the one on the explaining the American election system that was really
so
interesting.
you will get one today also, so you can share it in your
Okay,
group.
what's the topic?
It's about Indian elections, one nation, one election. It is something, whether it is something which is
I'll probably share it with the
yeah,
members on the platform.
yeah.
Great, Ranga. Thanks a lot for agreeing to do this talk. It was wonderful knowing your journey and learning from it. I think everybody's still trying to process it
No
in
problem.
their mind.
No,
The
it's
roller
nothing
coaster
there.
ride, very interesting one. Thanks a lot, and
Thank
thanks
you. Thank you
everybody for
all.
joining in.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thanks.